We begin tonight with the case that has gripped and polarised the country for 22 years. It began with the deaths of 5 people in Dunedin in 1994, all of them shot. David Bain was found guilty of their murder in 1995. On 3 occasions, that verdict was upheld by the Court of Appeal. But in 2007, the Privy Council determined a substantial miscarriage of justice had occurred and quashed David Bain's conviction. In 2009, the jury in a High Court retrial found David Bain not guilty. The issue of compensation followed, and that's been similarly polarised. But today the government announced it will pay him nearly $1 million in a full and final settlement. The government insists the $925,000 is not compensation, but money for the time and cost of settling the case. Unlike the Tainapora case, there will be no apology. In response, David Bain, who spent 13 years in prison, says the government's got it wrong and he is innocent. Sharon Brett-Kelly reports.
More than 20 years after he was convicted of the murder of 5 of his family members, David Bain's legal battle is over. After a number of reviews and appeals failed, the Privy Council quashed the conviction in 2007 and he was acquitted in a retrial in 2009. But 7 years later, the Justice Minister Amy Adams says a report has found that Mr Bain has not met a threshold to prove his innocence.
There is accordingly no basis on which Cabinet could be satisfied that Mr Bain had met the established threshold for compensation for wrongful conviction and imprisonment. Accordingly, no statement of innocence or payment of compensation under the guidelines will be made to Mr Bain.
The case has cost taxpayers millions of dollars in legal fees, reports and reviews, and for the 13 years Mr Bain spent in prison at around $100,000 a year. Amy Adams says Mr Bain and his lawyers do not accept Mr Callinan's findings, but the $925,000 ex gratia payment will avoid further legal action.
Mr Bain has accepted this payment in full and final settlement of all matters. This resolution is, I believe, a pragmatic one that recognises the unique circumstances of this case and a desire on all sides to bring this matter to a close.
Ms Adams says it is one of the most complex, unique and high-profile cases New Zealand has ever known. The author of the report, Ian Callinan QC, says it is a case like no other and it is likely no one will ever know what happened.
Very, very few cases, in fact I know of none, that has been considered by so many different judges over such a long period. It was a difficult case.
In what way?
Well, the complexity of the facts and the elapse of a long period of time.
Outside his home in Christchurch, David Bain told RNZ News the government and Mr Callinan got it wrong.
Basically, the only thing I have to say is that Ms Adams, Ms Collins, Mr Callinan, they've all got it wrong. I am innocent. I didn't do anything that morning. I had nothing to do with this entire process, and they have got it wrong.
When did you get notification?
I'm sorry, I'm not willing to answer any questions.
Not answering any questions.
Okay. Thank you for the time.
A friend, Lindsay Robertson, says he hopes Mr Bain can get on with his life as a father and husband, but the payment is wrong.
It seems like hush money to me. But I guess in the end, if it allows Dave to settle down and have a nice life with his new family, to put some of the crap behind him and get on with his life, then that's a good thing.
Catherine Spencer has known David Bain since the early 1990s when she taught him German. She says the legal wrangle is over, but he will never have a normal life.
It's very difficult within the confines of a small country like New Zealand. He's very recognisable. And this case has polarised the whole of New Zealand. And just as people recognise Arthur Allen Thomas all these years later, that will remain to be the same for David.
More than 22 years after 5 Bain family members were found shot dead at 65 Every Street, people in South Dunedin are divided over the settlement.
They're just neglecting the issue and just trying to buy him off, bob it off, and the rest of us as well.
I don't think he should have got it.
Why not?
Well, the evidence pointed towards him doing it, didn't it?
I'm not quite sure if he's not guilty or not. I've never been convinced.
I feel that way too. Well, I guess they kind of have to, don't they? It's such a grey area.
Yeah.
They're not saying he's guilty, they're not saying he's not guilty, but yet they've taken X amount of years away from his life.
Yeah.
So they've given it to everyone else, so they have to give them something. So go Bain, get another woolen jersey.
A long-time supporter, Joe Karam, says David Bain's claim for compensation has occupied him almost full-time for 6 years. He says Mr Bain has not yet been paid and he cannot comment further until the government completes the settlement. Mō te hōtaka o te ahi, ko Sharon Brett Kelly tēnei.